Even know what ready means, but I'm ready.
You're ready. Hey, everybody, this is David Paul, the host of the Capital Stack podcast, where we talk about investing, we talk about startups, technology, value creation, business building with the smartest founders, operators, and tech investors in the business. And today I am really, really proud to have Rob Pakalski on. He is the founder and CEO of Datum. Datum is a software as a service platform that offers procurement and sourcing solutions for advanced manufacturers in order that they can efficiently and proactively source really high precision advanced manufacturing parts in a great way. They work with really great space companies like Relativity, Astrolab, and some other great ones that Rob will talk about. And they also have a great managed services department where they offer boutique supply chain as a service for these companies. Pakalski, how you doing?
Good, man. I always love how you pronounce my last name. It's a little twang to it.
Yeah,
Pacal.
it's like a Midwestern thing. Hey,
It is,
Pakalski.
yeah.
Do
It
they
is
call you
very,
that?
very.
Do they call you that in high school?
Yeah, I'd say like coaches and stuff would go for like a Pack or Patsky stuff like that.
Yeah, I got it. I got it.
Had to shorten it up a little bit. I think it's a little too long.
Right on, right on. So, super excited you're on the show. You are in the midst of closing a round.
Yep.
I mean, leave it up to you on how much or how little you want to disclose about that.
Yeah, I'm happy to kind of dive into it. Yeah, so we did a $1 million pre-seed, which was led by a firm called DWP Capital, and then we are in process of running a seed, which will be probably end up being just under 5 million. So kind of doing a lot of the different allocations, so to speak, now. But
That
yeah.
number just keeps getting higher, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. It's been but yeah, no, it's been really a great journey to go through fundraising, and really had a chance to meet some really excellent people, both VC world and the different founders you get to meet along that. So it's been really, really a great journey. But I am incredibly excited to move on, kind of the post fundraise, get back to being an operator, and get to moving on that types of stuff.
How many pitches did you think you've done?
Oh God. I could pull up the Airtable I have on this, but I think I probably talked to, I mean, at least 80 different firms.
Mm-hmm.
And what was really strange about that, and maybe this is just luck and things, but I think we only reached out to maybe one or two, right? I think that there's, I mean, obviously this game, but there's such an ecosystem, right, where you just talk to one, and then all of a sudden they ask you to talk to four or five, and then word just kind of keeps getting around, your deck keeps getting flown around. So my strategy was to not really turn down any calls and just talk with everybody. And so that ended up being a lot of meetings, but they're all really great. I think it was challenging in the beginning to do maybe five to sometimes as many as maybe 8 or 9 pitches in a day, and then you're just kind of waiting for feedback, right? So that first kind of month is tough because we only had maybe one situation where after the first pitch, the person was like, "Yeah, hey, it's not for us." Everyone else kept being interested, and so then you do one pitch, it ends up being 4 or 5 different calls, right? And so I was very anxious in the beginning to just kind of hear, hey, if this thing's going to fall apart in the third or fourth quarter, I just need to know what it is so that I can articulate the message better. So
I remember that vividly. You were,
yeah, it was
it was a
stressing
very
me out.
scary time.
Yeah, it was. It was. Yeah, I mean, I'm the type that I like to hear feedback, and I like to brainstorm and adjust on that. I think a lot of people are like that, and so it was in one hand, it was this fortunate position, right, where you're looking at it and going, "Wow, this is great. No one's saying no." But then on the other hand, it was like no one has said no yet, and that kind of was bad too, because I knew we weren't going to bat 1,000. No one's going to. And there were certain firms you really want because you think that they can help you a lot and they're good strategic partners, and so you want to make sure that when you go into those pitches, again, you're articulating things well, right? I mean, this is, kind of what we were talking about in that time. You only have, typically a 30-minute call, right? And then the next meeting is another 30-minute call, but it's someone new, right? And so you're
Mhm.
basically doing the same pitch again. So, you don't have these kind of like 30-minute blocks to talk about new stuff. It kind of is like, how do you select about what you really need to say in that 30-minute block of time, which realistically ended up being around, 17, 18 minutes
And
of,
that's because you're talking to the associate first, and then they're bringing in their partner.
yeah. Or even if you started with a partner, the way we saw it, the way I was seeing it was you talk to one partner. If they get super excited about it, they bring on another partner, right? And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I think it's you want to be able to kind of start the pitch with kind of talking about what actually is the product, what's the problem we're solving, because a lot of that can get lost in translation. I've definitely found, right? One person hearing your 30-minute pitch, then trying to explain it to somebody else, sometimes some details get lost in there. So you want to kind of be in control of that, I think. But to my original point, you really wanted to know what are the things you really emphasize on. And it took us a while to start getting that feedback. Maybe a month and a half in, I think, we really started, thankfully hearing some no's. That was very helpful. Made some really just kind of quick, tweaks to that, and then we're fortunate to, start getting yeses from the firms we really wanted on board. And yeah, I
And
mean,
well, yeah. So then, so it's this kind of like abyss. You don't know where you stand with a lot of these firms. Every meeting's a good meeting, at least for the first one. You started getting a couple no's later, right? Which kind of gives you some, and then the first term sheet drops,
yeah.
right? And then what was it like?
Yeah, I mean, that changes the game entirely, right? I mean, once you have one term sheet, or in our case, we had, I think, one or two or three kind of come in the same week and a half. And so then, yeah, it became this weird thing of, you go a month and a half or so of doing all these pitches and not hearing much, or hearing a few no's, to then getting just one, two, three yeses. And then all of a sudden, within the next week and a half, we were 4x oversubscribed, right? So, it really, took a positive turn once you have kind of the confidence of a lead. Yeah, you start getting term sheets very easy, and then you start getting, firms that give commitments and, the few 100,000 mark to trying to get in on the round. So yeah, it was a whole nother game once we had at least one of those term sheets, no doubt about
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's why I like to lead, right? Because,
that.
everyone's so worried about like other people. I'm like, don't worry about it. Once the term sheet comes, they're going to try to bump me out.
Yeah.
Right. So that's great. Why don't you talk to the audience a little bit about the product from a high level, and
Sure.
we're, and then your kind of your experience within space tech, within frontier tech, noticing this problem and then deciding you wanted to fix it.
Yeah, sure. So, just kind of starting, with the product, try to give you the kind of the very 30,000-foot overview of it. Yeah, what we're really looking to do is to be the, nucleus of the world's manufacturing supply chain, right? So we're working to build a platform for strategic sourcing, starting in the advanced manufacturing industry first. And there's three kind of, call it, features of the software, or of the platform rather, that, I think, if I run through quickly, it'll give you a good idea of what the platform does. The first one is supplier identification engine. The second one is quoting communication tool, and third one is services. Um, First one, supplier identification engine. What we're doing there is using things like computational geometry and some AI to be able to read a CAD file, or a digital file of a component that needs to be manufactured to build your end product. And the what we're reading that
This would
file.
this would be a piece of a rocket, or
Yeah,
a rover, or a satellite.
yep. Picture like a best example, like a metallic component, right? That
Hmm.
you would use to join an assembly. So maybe, a piece of a engine, right? You have a custom engineered component, and that component then becomes part of the engine assembly, and that engine assembly becomes part of the rocket, right? So it's very much so the kind of granular component level sourcing is what we're focused on. What we're reading from these CAD files is to be able to help users, and those being the buyers of the component, the procurement teams, be able to identify what's the manufacturing method for this component, and then what is the subset of criteria that's needed for this part within that manufacturing method, right? So it's very important to know that within these manufacturing verticals, they're all high skilled trades, right? Things like CNC machining, composite, sheet metal, wire harnessing, fasteners. Those verticals are not commoditized, right? One CNC machine shop can be dramatically different from another based on their equipment, their skill sets, things like that. And so the first part of the strategic sourcing kind of puzzle is being able to determine what is it that I even need for my supply base in the first place. And that's a very, it's a technical question, right? To even know it's a CNC machine part versus maybe a sheet metal part is something that procurement individuals need to be able to identify. And then they need to understand, based on the geometry of the part, the size of the part, the material of it. Those kind of factors about it are going to tell you what it is you need from your supply base. And so we're able to do that with the computational geometry and AI and some education content and things, allow users to know, okay, this is what I need from my suppliers. And then we pull data that is manufacturing specific that allows you to then say, based on what you needed, here are optimal suppliers both in and out of your supply base. And that allows you to make a very methodical supplier selection decision, and that's the basis kind of developing a strategic advantage in your manufacturing company versus another, is to have beat them on cost, quality, and delivery. And to do that, you need to have a better supply chain. To have a better supply chain, you need to have optimal suppliers building every part. So we focus on that, and then the next one is that quoting communication tool. So once you've identified here are some optimal suppliers to build a specific component, we want to be able to replace email as the current primary use for quoting. Email is wildly inefficient to go out and quote a bunch of parts. It also lacks the security requirements, the cybersecurity requirements that are needed, especially in things like aerospace and defense. You have requirements such as ITAR, CMMC, that are very strict on not being able to kind of loosely send your engineering files, and that's what's happening culturally in aerospace and defense. Still, a lot of startups and things are just sending files via their Outlook, via their Gmail to suppliers. They have no traceability, they have no cybersecurity. So what we're trying to do is to be able to build a very highly emphasized user experience where you can run quoting events very efficiently, but then also have the security compliance that you're needed to run that quoting event as well. So it's really this mixture of that sourcing tool, being able to find optimal suppliers and then be able to run the quoting communication with that supplier, so that you
And
can.
so so why were you the guy to figure this out? And like why, was that because you were at SpaceX, and because at SpaceX procurement, professionals, I mean, pretty much anybody at SpaceX had to be kind of an engineer, right?
Yeah, I mean, SpaceX it's a very, very technical environment, I would say. I am not an engineer. None of us co-founders actually are. We do have some hardware engineers and things on staff, but yeah, I could kind of give you a quick blurb about my background there. So I did just under 4 years at SpaceX in supply chain. After SpaceX, I went over to Virgin Hyperloop and led their supply chain department for around 2.5 years. But with at SpaceX, that's really where my recognition, I'd say, of this problem came, and kind of what maybe validated me to be able to start this company with co-founders to solve the problem. And so yeah, I mean, at SpaceX, I, along with the other two co-founders, we worked in new product introduction supply chain. So we were in charge starting back in like 2013, 2014, to source any custom engineered component that was going to be used on a new product at SpaceX. So you had things like first reusable Falcon 9, you had Falcon Heavy, you had a new Dragon spacecraft, you had a spacesuit, Starship rocket, stuff like that, right? All being developed at the same time. And so to source all those components correctly, you needed to have a technical sourcing lens, right? It was first able to open up a blueprint, open up a CAD, and be able to determine, okay, this is machined based on the geometry. It's going to have to run on a milling machine. Specifically, that milling machine is going to have 5 axes of orientation. All these kind of technical variables that I won't bore you with the details on. But that learning gap was very challenging. And the issue is that procurement should be a commercial role. At the end of the day, that's what you're in charge of in that sense. But crossing that, I should say, I mean, you're never going to be good at buying something unless you know what you're buying. I mean, just generally as a principle, right? And so if you're put in a position of buying a technical product and you're not able to understand what it is you're buying, you're not good at it, right? So I had to personally spend a lot of time, and SpaceX was very good about training us on things like blueprint reading, or spending a lot of time in machine shops, spending a lot of time in composite different certifications, things like that. But yeah, that set us up to be able to understand, like, okay, to get good at this, we need to be technical. To be technical, there's a learning gap there. And then not only that, it's once you're able to have the technical skill set to be able to say, okay, this is what I need for my supply base. You still have the huge problem of knowing who in your supply base even has what you need from your requirements, and that's a huge challenge, right? You don't have a central depository of data that says these are the capabilities of all the suppliers. So what you end up doing is just kind of shooting from the hip, and we try to be very methodical about this at SpaceX. I think that that's SpaceX top credit. I always say it goes to the engineering team and everything that they did to design the product. But we did have a lot of supply chain wins in there as well, right? I mean, at the end of the day, we built product that was several years faster than competition, and a third the cost. And a lot of that was because I think we found more optimal suppliers to build things. We sat down and were very technical in the analysis to say this component should go to this type of machine. These suppliers have these types of machine. The issue is that we were so low in efficiency in being able to source technically and strategically that it ended up falling apart a lot still, right? And so that's where we had this idea that says, okay, if we just really hyper focus on building this platform, you're really going to be able to be the nucleus of how all these procurement decisions are made. How buyers are actually going to be interacting with suppliers, and really build value for both of them.
Yeah, so there's probably like 30 people on the planet that know how to do what you guys do, and most of them now work at your company.
Yeah, I think that our services division. Well, first off, it's definitely more than 30, but we're trying to, yeah, in a lot of ways, kind of monopolize that niche talent skill set. While it's niche, it's still incredibly, high impact value, right? You're talking about managing or controlling the cost of goods sold of your product, right? You're talking about a lot of the factors of determining how fast you're going to be able to bring that product to market, right? Is reliant on this person you've put in charge of choosing who's going to be building stuff. And so there's a lot of software tools, or there's a lot of features within our software platform that we're emphasizing to help you kind of be the workflow management platform to do that work. But at the end of the day, yeah, you need a human being still to do a lot of things, to negotiate with suppliers, to project manage orders when they're open. So that's why we're not just purely a SaaS platform. We do have a service offering. We have a fantastic services team that's full of former SpaceX, Virgin Orbit, things like that. People who source components on companies' behalf. They project manage orders, and we will continue to have that services division where companies who are on the platform can order that kind of, maybe call it special forces supply chain team, kind of a la carte. So that they can kind of have both services and software, or some companies will just have the software. But we're very optimistic about the growth of services and what we can do, kind of centralizing some of the top talent in the industry in one place. I think it's really going to be great, and it has been the past year and a half that we've been doing it. We've had a lot of success helping some really great companies.
Awesome. So tell me, what got you into wanting to work at SpaceX? Tell me a little bit about your career before that, and how you kind of went into space technology.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever talked about this before.
No, I didn't care. Yeah. I mean, I know it's, a little, if it's not in the deck, do we really need to go into it?
Yeah. So, I mean, I've always been kind of, involved with, interested in supply chain. I think that, I mean, the way that my brain likes to work is I like to figure out like a lot of people, I like to figure out how the world works, and some people have different perspectives of how they like to figure that out, right? I think I look at, I mostly work with engineers, and they like to look at it. They like to understand how everything in the physical world kind of pieces together and how that all works. For me, I like to look at it, I think, a little bit more of a macro lens of just kind of variables, whether it's geopolitical or logistics and things, and kind of how they all come together to build something. And so I think that I've actually had a lot of interest in supply chain. My parents were involved in importing and things, so I got a view into that. And then in college, I started a business that was manufacturing stand-up paddleboards, and it's kind of a brand in the Midwest. We were probably importing, I don't know, 200 or 300 boards a year. So not a huge operation, but in college, to have a few $100,000 in revenue is a pretty exciting thing, and to run import operations and know manufacturing facilities overseas, and dealing with all the headaches of that taught me a lot, and it taught me a lot about composites as well, which that really helped me when I was looking, graduating college. I had two companies I wanted to work for. One of them was SpaceX. I applied and really emphasized, being able to start that business. I'm sure that was, a big kind of wedge in for me. But when I got the job, I was actually working in finance for maybe the first week or two. And then I got put on to buy composite layup molds, this is actually a funny story that involves Ryan, one of the co-founders.
I'm
And
so excited for this really funny story about composite layup molds.
no,
Like
no, no.
this is gonna be a barn burner here,
It gets
guys.
better. It
Like,
gets better. All right. So
okay.
I had to buy these things, composite layup molds, but no one knew I was doing that. And the head of composite buying, who was not Ryan at the time, saw me on an email thread, and he came up to me and he said, "Hey, I thought you like only buy pens and paper and do finance stuff over here." And I said, "No, I know about composites." And then he read the email thread, and he's like, "Oh, this guy kind of knows what he's talking about." So then he goes to his boss and says, "Hey, we should recruit this kid who sits across from me to buy flight parts." And that his boss comes and talks to me and goes, "Would you want to buy flight parts?" I said, "Yeah, sure, that sounds cool." I'm like 1 or 2 months in. I'm like 21 years old, and SpaceX is the most intimidating place ever. I just
Right.
sit there
You're
all
buying Bic pens, right?
Yes, yes, I
Yeah.
was. But I had this weird in to the composites to show I had some technical knowledge with it. And then that night, I'm working at around like 10 p.m. And Ryan Nagel, who I don't know yet, but I know he's a stud buyer. He comes up to my desk and he goes, "What's up?" And I'm like, he's like, "I'm Ryan." I'm like, "Hey, what's up?" He goes, "Is this your rig?" And he points to my computer. Like, "Yep." He goes, "Cool." Unplugs both monitors, grabs them. He's like, "Follow me." Walks downstairs. I'm like, "What the hell?" So we walk downstairs and I go into their like fishbowl room. He's like, "Yeah, you're on our team now." And I'm like, "Okay, sounds good." Work till like midnight, get up, come to work the next morning. And my boss texts me and she's like, "Hey, where the hell is all your stuff?" Like thinking I like rage quit or something. And little did I know that they just told him to come and grab my stuff without figuring out. But I guess I was being traded for, but they hadn't discussed the trade yet between the managers. So Ryan just kind of took it on himself to bring me downstairs, which is very old school SpaceX story. You just kind of did stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, Ryan Nagel, one of your co-founders, I think
Yeah.
we would be remiss not to talk a little bit about him and
Yeah.
what he's doing. I'm definitely going to have him on the podcast probably in the next couple of quarters. But give a little background on Ryan and kind of his background and bringing him and then within SpaceX and now at Datum.
Yeah, no, I'd love to. I mean, yeah, Ryan is one of my closest friends, of course, a co-founder alongside Thomas as well. But yeah, Ryan is he's the best procurement person I know, best supply chain person I know. He is incredibly bright. His ability to understand how things are made and get very granular with stuff, and his detail orientation is very high. He's also a fantastic leader of teams. He was my manager for a long time. And I mean, if Elon Musk is trusting you in your 20s to run the supply chain of some of your most important products, you must be doing something right, and have your head on straight. So Ryan is an amazing hire. He's not hire, founder with us, but he's been able to hire an amazing team too. He runs the managed services team. But yeah, I think we have different ways of thinking, which is great, right? I think my head, as I mentioned, I'm more of kind of a macro thinker. Ryan is very, very granular, very kind of detail oriented, OCD. And so Thomas, the other co-founder, is kind of right in the middle of us, I like to say. So it's ended up being a fantastic partnership. But I think the beauty of it is founding a company with Thomas and Ryan is I don't think we're fortunate to not have some of the challenges of other people, because we've already been to hell and back together, working for 4 years on some really intense projects. So it's been very easy, I think, to kind of get into that flow, which I'm very fortunate for. But yeah, he's just really just a fantastic leader of teams. And we have our arguments about different dumb stuff usually in the day, which is entertaining. But he is couldn't ask for a better person to lead that services division, and just complete confidence in his ability to deliver on anything a customer is going to ask for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. So tell me a little bit about what it was like working at SpaceX and Virgin, and kind of the culture, the onboarding, like what was kind of the ethos around there, and kind of some learnings about that.
Yeah. I mean, SpaceX was awesome. So was Virgin Hyperloop. But yeah, I mean, SpaceX. I think that everyone says it's you put your time there in dog years, which I think is accurate, right? I think what's so unique about SpaceX is really two things, I will say. The first is Elon is a complete genius at building a culture of pride of everyone at the company. I'd say when I was there, 60 to 70% of people wore SpaceX gear to the office, right? Thousands of people, right? People's so many of the employees' personal identity is really latched so closely onto working at SpaceX, which I think is incredibly unique, right? I think that I have friends that work at things like maybe Burton snowboards, right? And there's this hobby that they all have together where they all go out and snowboard together. So it made sense that they'd be obsessed that they work at Burton. What's unique about SpaceX is you don't get to ride the rocket, right? You don't get to ride the spacecraft. Or even if you work for a car company,
Mm-hmm.
for McLaren, you can see how you'd be so passionate because maybe you get a McLaren out of it and you get to feel the power of it yourself, right? With SpaceX, you don't even get to do that, but it's Elon still managed to build a cult following within his employees and others, right? I think that is incredibly unique, and it is just so powerful to go to work every day where everybody is just so tuned into that. I mean, everybody's like anxious as hell and like freaking out. Like there's negatives to it, but in general,
Right.
it was that pride is just something just super special. And I think the other unique thing about it, the level of trust and accountability they give into every single person is wild, right? There isn't anybody, very rarely you come across somebody and you're like, what do you do here, and what are you responsible for as far as like looking at our end product, right? Like what everyone is doing. If something goes wrong at the launch or something, exactly who's going to have a headache the next month to try to figure out, because who's in charge of that subassembly, who sourced it, who's the financial analyst for that. So it's very trusting, for a 20, as I said, 21 years old, and you're buying, all the structural components for the first reusable, rocket, and you're not an engineering background, and you're sitting on an engineering floor. That's a hell of a lot of trust to put into somebody. But it also makes you work that much harder, and I'm sure it's linked to having so much pride in what you're doing. So it was great. I would say it probably is similar to like working at like an investment bank or something, right? That level of maybe stress and pressure. I think there's a lot of that, but you end up I'd say most people who work there would say that's where they end up doing some of their best work, and there's a reason for that. Version Hyperloop was cool. It was great. Actually, met some amazing people. Had a chance to build a really great team. It was different though. It's a startup, and you're not restricted to just domestic suppliers, which is interesting for me. But it was cool. I mean, you don't really get a chance to build a product that gets to be a electric vehicle that also has to operate in a space environment. So it's essentially a spacecraft. Plus, it's this huge construction site that you have to build simultaneously. So it was a pretty wild sourcing and engineering endeavors that I got to sit around for, which is really cool. But yeah, definitely different. I don't think anything is really going to be quite the same as SpaceX.
Yeah, so you were able to work at, companies that were started by the richest and one of the richest people and, smartest people on the planet. Do you have any stories about Elon or Richard Branson?
Yeah, I'm fortunate to be able to interact with both of them. I think that I think it's interesting. I think it's different watching Elon like in a meeting, say, versus when he gives like a public speeches and things like that. I think he's much more extremely confident and very focused in meetings, and he knows exactly what's needed. I mean, it's so incredibly challenging to know more than the guy, right? Because he has both Tesla
Mm-hmm.
and SpaceX, right? And he has every ecosystem of every resource, right? And so every single day, the amount of knowledge he has just keeps compounding and compounding, right? And so he really is. I think he is just completely as bright as he's marketed. I think some funny stories. I mean, the thing about him is he just never really knew how we would react to something, right? I'd get. I think the most nervous I've been is when working on the visor for the spacesuit. I took a big gamble. I think I was telling you the story at our board meeting, but I took a big gamble to have that made locally because it was way less expensive than like how fighter jets make their visors. So I knew he would like that, and I got the product, and me and the engineer put it up to our face, and it was so blurry. We got a headache in like 20 seconds, and so we knew we were in some trouble. Uh, so then I had to, yeah, go write him a email and show it to him his things. But yeah, then you go down and you explain the situation to him. You explain it's like, yeah, it's going to be a lot more than what we would like. Kind of seems ridiculous price tag, but then he'd look at it and be like, seems reasonable, and just kind of walk away. Sometimes he would just be very cool and understanding, and sometimes he would. Sometimes he also thought stuff was overkill, right? Like everyone would be freaking out because there's a meeting with Elon, and then he'd show up and see a bunch of people outside the conference room. I remember him looking around and just go, "Do we really need an army for this?" And then he'd walk in, and then you'd have, all right, well, who goes in? So. But no, I mean, I obviously he's just a fantastic leader and just so incredibly smart. I'm very lucky to work for him. But yeah, the dude knows how to keep everybody on the edge of their seat and have a lot of pressure. He's not afraid to fire, perform, people that aren't performing very highly. The people that I started with the same day of, probably over half of them did get let go at some point. So it's there's that, right? You always have that. But he just really demands top talent, and you get a lot out of it too, right? And he recognizes that. I don't think he's just some savage or anything, but he is for sure willing to do what it takes to get done what he wants to get done. I think Richard was a lot different. Richard, he was more just really wanted to be very much so liked by everybody in a good way. He's not a technical person, I wouldn't say, which is fine, right? But yeah, he kind of wanted to come in, and his more focus was around like, how's the sustainability of this, and is everyone feeling good about working here, and is everyone like the day to day of stuff, right? It was less kind of product focused and go 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 go. he I think is a little bit different in that sense. Not that I got to interact with him a ton, but he would come in every now and again, and had a chance to meet with him a few times.
Cool. Right on. Right on. Yeah, I don't understand. I mean, I think like the right term is like processing power that Elon has of information to work on all of those projects simultaneously. It
You mean
blows my mind.
like his own
You know,
ability to process the information, or like?
correct, correct. Yeah, it's just as a CEO of these companies simultaneously, and to have a hand in all of these different business units, and to be able to process this information and have output, to have input and output, right? And
Yeah.
not for his brain not to get scrambled.
Yeah. I mean, he's an anomaly, man. I mean, he just is. I would love to say, if you read online, some people think it's all talk and he's not actually technical, but I've never found that to be the case. I think he is just pretty
Yeah.
exceptional, and I mean, as I said though, it just keeps compounding every single day. He just keeps getting so much more smarter because he just has two companies with, I'd argue, the top engineers at both of them. He talks to them all day long, and then he's got fantastic CFOs, fantastic, supply chain people, production people, right? And to be able to understand, like, I think this is what's so unique is, automotive and aerospace are incredibly different in a lot of ways, right? Their supply chains are set up different. It's a different game, right? And he always was very hyper obsessed with making rocket building into similar to how you build cars, right? And he was really able to kind of bring a lot of what he learned always from Tesla and bring that into the SpaceX floor, which, he did recruit a lot of automotive people work at SpaceX too. But his knowledge set of being able to have that and apply it at SpaceX was just like, was wildly powerful.
Oh, awesome. So you left Virgin, you grabbed some people, some longtime friends and coworkers at SpaceX. You start Datum. You start a managed services business. You raise $1 million from the esteemed DWP Capital, like tier one brand. And then now you just finish your top of the top, and then four and a half. It was like 6 or 7 months later, there's, upwards of close to $5 million coming in. What's next for you? What's on the agenda? I mean, because there's some really exciting stuff that is going to be coming to you operationally. So how are you thinking about that?
Yeah, man, it's all about product market fit now. That's just the hyper obsession, figuring out how to have the right processes and culture, everything internally to be able to get there. Right. I think that we're unique in the situation that we have this service market fit. Right. We work with all sorts of different rocket, spacecraft, rover, electric vehicle, defense, nuclear energy, to looking at some submarine contracts or satellite propulsion, stuff like that, right? We work with a lot of these different companies, and we have been able to really provide a lot of value doing that, and that's all great. But it's going to take us to be able to understand, to listen to all those users, to be able to build a software platform with them, right? I saying to the team yesterday, one of my biggest concerns is we're half SpaceX people right now, and I don't want to live in a proxy of just SpaceX, right? And just build a product that would only help that use case that we saw. So that's the beauty of having a managed services, though, is we get to see behind the curtain of a lot of different supply chain teams and understand, okay, here are the universal problems that's happening between all of them, and let's make sure that we put that into the platform. Let's draw up the user experience of that. It's incredibly important to be just world class on user experience. Show that to users. Make sure we're heading the right direction and actually solving problems. End of the day, what we need to do is build a very, very sticky procurement product. It needs to be the command and control center of procurement people, and we're not going to be able to do that without listening to users, iterating, failing fast, all the generic stuff. That's true. We're going to have to do that. And then services wise, we're going to have to really standardize what we're doing there, right? And so, a lot of it is kind of arbitrary, of kind of, maybe what we offer, or We try out different pricing models and things, and so standardizing that is going to be very important, so that users can order those services kind of a la carte through the platform. So we're very hyper focused on keeping current customers happy, growing that customer base, but then also figuring out how to standardize everything we're doing there. So really mixing that with the software, but it really is first thing and foremost. It starts with filling out the team. Um, I think thing I'm probably most proud of with Datum is the team that we've built. It's just such elite high performers that I pinched myself that decided to join Datum, both from the software and managed services side. We have great energy, great culture, and so we need to we have a unanimous thumbs up system right now, and so it's gonna be a process to fill out maybe the next 5 roles or so that we need to get to product market fit. But that'll be priority number one. At the end of the day, it all boils down to the people you have. So that's going to be huge for us.
Awesome. What is the, when you think about, kind of growing your team and the culture and finding that product market fit, how do you incorporate kind of sales into that and getting kind of that validation?
Yeah. I think sales. I think the beauty of kind of where we're at now is that with the sales side of things, we can go in and sell to companies and say, hey, you should really supplement your supply chain or outsource it to us. Here's some of the values we can do. But then here's the software that's coming that's going to be able to take a lot of what we're doing and allow you to do it even better than we do it. And so I think the sales vehicle for us is very much so, as I mentioned, continuing to make sure that our current customers are very happy with services that we're doing, but that they also feel very much so heard in the platform that we're building, so that they know that right when they get it, it's going to be useful to them. Our big thing is, we're building a platform here, so we do have the luxury of network effects once we get momentum. So we already have a pretty great splash in the market of companies we're working for that are, great logos and really just great people. If we can knock it out of the park to continue to do good services to them, to build a software product that they truly love, and they bring their suppliers on it, and those suppliers love it, that momentum should be enough that it's going to be really a situation where other companies that aren't on Datum are going to feel very disadvantaged versus their competitors who are on it, right? And that's really what we need to make sure the market understands. And I think as long as we do what we're setting out to do and really build a fantastic product for these kind of initial 20 to 40 OEMs that we're targeting, that will really put us in a great position to be able to prove to the market how much they need us. And with every OEM, the more suppliers come on, and suppliers feel that they need to be on it because that's where they're winning new work. And then vice versa, OEMs feel like they want to use Datum because almost all their suppliers are already on it. It becomes this great system of the momentum keep rolling, but it all falls apart if we don't have the discipline to make sure that we're building a really, really great product.
Mm-hmm. And what is the big picture of Datum?
Yeah, so I mean, really, I think I mentioned earlier that kind of our mission statement, so to speak, is to be the nucleus of the world's manufacturing supply chain, and I really like that word nucleus because it really stretches, or really shows how we want to be the platform where you're able to really engage activity within your supply chain, and then really also foster growth for both the supplier side and the OEM side. So being in that position of being that nucleus is incredibly powerful, right? We don't just see ourselves as just topping out as being this call it e-sourcing tool that helps you find suppliers and quote. We really want to leverage being in that position of being in the middle such that we can help continue to enable activity and enable growth for both sides. So what that really means is that we are very well positioned to do things once we have product market fit, such as being able to help suppliers get paid faster, right? Right now, there is a huge problem where you have conflicting interests from the the OEMs who bought the parts and the suppliers who are supplying things, right? What I think a lot of people don't know is just how fragmented the supply chain is for advanced manufacturing, right? If you look at CNC machining, which is one of the primary verticals that we work with, it's a good microcosm of all the industry. It's a huge industry. It's 43 billion, over 43 billion is done in machining in just the US, right? There's 18,000 machine shops in the US. That's more machine shops than SaaS companies, right? Just put it in perspective. And not one of those machine shops has more than 5% market share. So, typically around 83% of them are under 20 people. So, very small businesses. You're working with hundreds or thousands of these small businesses. And the issue is that, let's say you send $100,000 purchase order to these suppliers, which would be a common, price tag. These are expensive things. That supplier is going to have to spend maybe a month or two building that part, and they're going to have to front $70,000, $80,000 of cash, say, to do it, right? Between labor, materials, things like that. They're then going to deliver the part to the company, say Rocket Company, as an example. That Rocket Company is then going to say, great, we got it. I'm going to approve this invoice, and you'll get paid in 60 days, right? That's very hard for that small business who just fronted 70 grand and over 2 months, then have to wait another 60 days. We really love what Pipe has done in the SaaS market to be able to give advances on in their case, ARR. In our situation, we're trying to factor the entire supply chain. So a company that uses Datum platform, all of the invoices that they approve can be essentially sent to our marketplace, where then we have financial partners who say, I'll pay that $100,000 payable to that supplier right now at a, say, 3% discount, right? So the supplier, instead of having to wait 60 days, gets $97,000 now, and the banking partner gets $3,000, of which we get a cut of that. And so it's very important for us to be able to, we see that as one of the main things to help build resiliency in the supply chain, to help suppliers grow more, is to be able to do that. And so we really think that we have a incredibly well positioned to be that reverse factoring platform for the supply chain. There's other things that we can do here too, right? There's a lot of things like being able to supply materials to the machine shops themselves, right? We're transferring files of CAD. We understand the envelope sizes of parts that are being sent to them. We can help determine the optimal stock size and give you an instant quote. We can be a distributor of raw material. We can read the part to be able to determine what is the right machine tools you need to attach to your CNC, and you can buy those machine tools through us. Right now, the distribution process of buying things like that is also very fragmented and very messy and inefficient. We can really, again, be that nucleus where people are buying things like that. And so our positioning of being in the center can be leveraged in so many different ways. But really, ultimately, we're going to help companies build product and hardware, bring it to market faster. We're going to help the supply chain and those companies be able to grow. And we're going to be able to reduce a lot of waste in the supply chain. Waste from the perspective of cost, waste from the perspective of time, and waste from the perspective of things like materials, right? You're scrapping parts, you're having to redo certain items because an optimal supplier wasn't building it. We're really going to make really perfect efficiency in the supply chain, such that buyers are sending parts to the exact types of suppliers who should be building those parts, and suppliers are receiving parts that are in line with the strategic way that they've set up their business. They're getting parts that fit the core competency that they want, and that's really if we're able to really bring that to the market, we have just so many opportunities of what we can do with it.
How's hiring going for you?
Hiring's great. Yeah, we are 10 people right now. We just signed an offer letter for someone to come on to do computational geometry full time, which I'm incredibly excited about. Hoping we can land another back-end infrastructure engineer that we're far along with as well. And then we have a lot of different people in place to hopefully start in April. Things like product success manager, someone who's going to be able to help us really scale our ability to bring suppliers onto the platform. yeah, we have that. I think, there's some heads out there, like, head of product and things like that we still need to really dive into hiring. There's still some areas where I feel like I'm bottlenecking because I'm serving as kind of the interim of it, and I know Thomas and Ryan would say the same thing about they have certain roles where they feel that way. So, but hopefully hopefully after maybe next month, I'm hoping we really have a filled out team, and we're very teed up for the next year to really get to work on building this platform. But yeah, it'll be key to bring in those next maybe 5 hires. Will be big.
Yeah. So how is the transition from being, a guy that, is obviously very, very talented, very smart, but, has been working in supply chain to actually becoming a software CEO, and the skill, and how do you know you're not getting snowed, and, from technologists, how do you know who to hire? Like, I mean, how do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think the one thing I tell everybody, one of the first things I always say, especially to technical people I'm working with, is that I don't pretend to know something that I don't. I am very, straightforward with, not knowing certain things. But I think one thing to remember that's very applicable is that my whole career has been spent with really only working with technical people who understand something technical to 10 to 100x better than I do, right? And so I'm very used to that environment of working with people who are very much so a mile deep, inch wide, where I've always had to be kind of the opposite of that, right? So I'm very kind of comfortable working in situations where I'm not as technical as the person who is in charge of doing it. Maybe of course the uniqueness here is being CEO versus being kind of a colleague of that person is a little bit different. But I think at the end of the day, really what I'm personally very big on is developing a performance culture, and what that takes is my ability to give or my trust to give employees full autonomy of what they feel is best to do within their day. But that said, I do we do a product meeting every single day, right? And we go through that. Engineers are on that, and I'm always saying, I would love if this feature comes into the platform, but what does that look like from an engineering perspective, right? How many resources is that going to take? So I'm always trying to really understand these things and make sure I'm not signing the engineering team up to do something that's impossible or too challenging. But I will say, yeah, I mean, not being a technical founder um, sometimes has its challenges. But then again, I look at it and I go, sometimes I think it has its value too, right? I think that, for instance, I do know how to do supply chain, right? And so when we were first getting started with managed services, I kept getting looped into sourcing parts. You probably remember this early on, right? And that really distracted my ability, I think, to be a really good CEO, right? I was just kind of more just head down sourcing parts, and I feel that it's hard maybe to get out of that trap if I did know how to code, I did know computational geometry. I probably have my head down in that stuff maybe too much, where I should be just trying to really lead the company, focusing on getting us the resources we need, the culture we need, and making sure the vision's strong and everyone's in the right place.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Rob, I'm going to shoot you some quick canned questions that I usually do with every guest before we wrap up today. On a scale of 1 to 10, how good of an investor am I?
10 out of 10.
10 out of
Always,
10.
yeah.
Love it. Love it. Favorite book?
Um, that's a good question. Business book, I assume.
Sure.
Um, I think that I learned a lot of concepts from like Rich Dad Poor Dad, but I think that I think my favorite business book is Zero to One. I read it once a year. I just love the way Peter Thiel thinks about things, the way he really maps out how you need to not, everyone always says you just need to kind of start with a niche, but he more kind of elaborates on that more, that you need to monopolize a niche. And I think that
Mm-hmm.
a lot of the things that he's said in that book and the way he views things are the way I like to kind of develop the vision for what we're doing. So I think that's been probably the most impactful book for me is Zero to One.
Awesome. Best piece of business advice you've ever gotten?
In negotiation, never speak first.
There you go. There you go. A wise man once told you that, right?
Yeah. I think
Just
use that one
watch.
every day.
Yeah, just watch Pawn Stars.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah, exactly. They always say, "What do you want for it?"
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Never take first position.
Well, that's pretty hard. I mean, you probably have to do that a lot in VC, right? I mean,
Oh yeah. No, that's definitely one of those things you have to kind of see where their head's at, right? And then you
yeah,
can kind of, work your way through that.
yep.
And who is somebody you like to follow? Kind of that's relevant in your industry or within software that.
I follow a lot of people. I think, I look up a lot to the Flexport team, Ryan Peterson and things over there. Actually fortunate to be able to talk to their fund hopefully this week. But what he's done to be able to make kind of supply chain sexy and in tech, I think is very admirable. I think that also his ability to always stay boots on the ground, I think has been great. Right, to go out to container ships, understand the problems that are actually happening in supply chain. I think that that's a great sign of a leader I would aspire to be. So he's a really good follow.
Absolutely. Everybody, that is Rob Pakalski from Datum Source talking about all things space tech, working within, the greatest space companies on the planet and building a great team, finding product market fit, putting culture first and executing. Thank you so much, Rob, for coming. If you like this podcast and you want to share it, that would be great. We are on all major platforms. You could just put my name, David Paul, or look at the Capital Stack. Thanks for everyone. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.